All right, Foundations of Evidence-Informed Practice, Week 2. This week we will be focusing on basic science, clinical research, and delving into quantitative and qualitative research. So a little bit of a review from the first week. If a study is being financially funded by a company that stands to benefit from the results, this can raise concerns of, that's right, bias. Remember, for your final exam, you will need to give some strengths and limitations of research. So for a moment, think for yourself, what are a couple of strengths of research? So it can be objective. It involves statistical analysis. There is evolving knowledge. Ideally, it leads to new research, and it is peer-reviewed. Couple limitations. It may lack generalizability. It can be time-consuming, expensive. It may be misleading if there is bias, and it can be subject to funders' preferences. Please remember also for your final exam that you will need to know the interlocking circles and label them about treatment plan proposal. So you may want to pull out a piece of paper and practice that right now. This is the way that it should work. So what we have is our patient presentation, and these are all those things that I talked about that a person comes into your office to see you and why they're there. You have a certain amount of information about what the evidence says. You have your clinical experience, the knowledge that you bring. And all of this comes together to create that treatment plan proposal. And then remember all the interlocking parts, they come together with that treatment plan proposal, and then you present that to your client. And then whatever they agree to is, that's right, that's the treatment plan. So when we talk a little bit about basic science research, remember we are focused on the parts, the basic parts like cells or tissues. It's most often done in a laboratory. It can be used to develop new tests and new treatments. The thing to remember is that it is not immediately applicable to clients or patients. So an example of basic science research would be in this study here. Maternal care influences neuronal survival in the hippocampus of the rat. We are just looking at the cells and the tissue. Some basic science research oftentimes is called pure science. It is used to test an hypothesis. It is used to establish biologic plausibility, which means, does it make sense that this could work? It does not equal clinical effectiveness. It is driven by curiosity, not practicality, but it does not mean that it's impractical. The idea is that it will lead to more research and usefulness. There is a video link on Moodle that I would like you to watch. Now, when we talk about clinical research, this is sometimes called applied science because we are focusing on the study of health and disease in human beings. And we're looking at things like treatments, we're looking at interventions, medications, application of certain types of treatment. It is outcome measures we use when we're looking at clinical research. And again, it can be often immediately applied to patients or the human population. Some examples would be the effects of myofascial release after high intensity exercise, a randomized clinical trial. So let's test your knowledge here about this. Basic science or clinical research. Is massage therapy an effective treatment for acute low back pain compared to chiropractic, acupuncture, and opioid medication? That's right. This is clinical because we're looking at the effectiveness of massage therapy for low back pain. The next question, when slow stroke back massage is applied to rats, are there changes to brain waves occurring? And if so, how long do these changes last after the massage ends? So we're still looking at massage, but we're actually just looking at brain waves. So this would make this basic science. Last question, is acupuncture or chiropractic manipulation more effective for migraine headaches? That's right, it's clinical. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into clinical research. So we talk about things like qualitative or quantitative. So the first one, qualitative, this is research that aims to gain an understanding of human perception, emotion, or behavior using coding. So when you think about qualitative, the L in here can be about language. So it's the things that people say, why they enjoy massage, why they like a certain practitioner. This is data that is collected through interviews, through focus groups, and through observation. And it involves open-ended questions. When we talk about quantitative research, this is research methods that are used to describe observations or relationships in numeric terms. So these are directed questions. It's yes or no, it's a 1 through 5, those types of things. People are not elaborating on what it is that they like or dislike about something. This collects data through questionnaires, laboratory tests, imaging, and other ways that can be coded or numerated. It's numbers. When we talk about mixed methods, remember this is not just kind of smushing together qualitative and quantitative research. We're using qualitative design to enhance quantitative information. So an example would be in a study, it was found that 10% of the people who purchased food at the Minnesota State Fair on August 30th, 1999, said they enjoyed eating cotton candy. That's quantitative. 10% of the people who they interviewed that purchased food. So we could then say, what is it about the cotton candy that people enjoy? That's the qualitative part of it. They're going to elaborate on what it is that they liked about that cotton candy. When we use quantitative data to enhance qualitative information, it can look like this. 89 people described their lower back pain affecting the range of movement as debilitating. So they used words that they described how it felt. That's the qualitative portion of it. Whereas then we look at the quantitative part. Of those 89 people, 10 of them had a sit and reach score of 9 out of 10. 50 had a sit and reach score of 6 out of 10. And 40 had a sit and reach score of 3 out of 10. So let's test your knowledge here about quantitative or qualitative. So if we ask a group of students about the food in the cafeteria, are you satisfied with the food in the cafeteria? 1 equals yes, and 2 equals no. So is that quantitative or qualitative? That's right, it's quantitative. So the next question, how would you describe your experience in the cafeteria? That's right, it's qualitative. The next question could be, during an interview intake, a client or patient is asked about their symptoms on a scale of 0 to 10. How would you rate your symptoms today? So this is quantitative, remember, because we're asking them to give us a number. They have a finite number, a 0 to 10, and they're not asked to elaborate on it. Unless we get into the qualitative part, how have your symptoms affected your activities of daily living? This is an open-ended question. It allows them to talk more about their symptoms. Some basic principles of evidence. So I brought this up last week, and I want you to take a look at this again. What we're really focusing on here in this class is these last few types of studies, okay? So for these next couple of weeks, that's what we're going to be looking at: cohort, cross-sectional, case studies, case series, and case control. There are really 7 different types of research design that we are going to be focusing on. The first one is the case study. So this is one person, one playground. It is what we consider to be a bounded study. There is, again, it's one time frame, it's one person, it's one incident. Where a case series has no control group, so there could be, we may watch that one person for an extended period of time. We may go to that and watch those kids on a playground play and determine what their activities are, what toys they might play with more than others. It's a case series. Case control is we've got 2 groups, and one group might have the issue and one group doesn't have an issue. But we have 2 separate groups. Now, when we look at something that's cross-sectional, it means that we're just taking a snapshot in time. We may go and observe or interview the graduating class of Kennedy Senior High School on July 3rd, 2022, and just find out what is going on for them at that specific time. A cohort is a group that has commonalities to it. So this might be something where we take a group of nurses and we might ask them some questions, but we're looking specifically at that group because they all have the same occupation. We could do a cohort with a group of people that they all were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma on exactly the same day. Now, a randomized clinical trial is where we have a control group and there's blinding that's done, which we'll talk about that in later weeks. And then there's something that's called systematic reviews and meta-analysis, where we are combining original research on a particular subject. Now, again, we're going to focus a little bit more on the case study, case series, case control, cross-sectional, and the cohort. And then in later weeks, we'll do the randomized clinical trials and the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Now, when we talk about observational research, we're really looking at things that are clinical. So it's done in the field of epidemiology. So epidemiology, I want you to know the definition of this. It's the study of health and disease in the human population. It's truly about incidence, distribution, and control of disease. It's observations and measurements of people in real-world settings. And the applicable terms to this are things like retrospective, which means that we're reporting on things that have already happened, and prospective, which means that we are gathering data as we go along. So observational research really answers some specific questions. We're looking at things like, how common is a disease in a given population? What kinds of exposure increases the risk of a disease? Is there an association between exposure and the effect? And what type of interventions might work for this particular group? What dosage of X, Y, and Z medication is most efficacious? That's it. So remember, do your weekly graded activity. This one is really about basic science or clinical research. If you have any questions, let me know.